comfortable with. We are recording the training part of this. We won't record the Q&A, but this is so it's available to other people as and when it's needed. So I hope that's okay with you. Please keep your mics on mute unless you're contributing to the Q&A session. Any questions, type them into the chat box. My colleagues from the Reach Out Hub will be monitoring that as we go. Come and go as you please. So get your cups of tea, get your kids to bed. If a child interrupts, sort them out. You know, this is meant to be super, super, super informal because it's the best way of doing it. So please do that. Slides will be emailed to you. So please do not panic if you don't get everything written down. Okay. So I'm going to hand over to Jess Allen now from the Early Years Stronger Practice, who's just got a few bits and bobs to run through. So Jess.
Hello. Right, so I am Jess Allen. I am one of the, there's me. I am one of the strategic leads for the Reach Out Stronger Practice Hub, one of two in the east of England. Damon on the left of the photo is our project manager. He's also on here tonight, as is Victoria, the other strategic lead. Lisa's not joining us this evening, but she's been working with childminders all day, so she's having a bit of a rest. So moving on, thank you. So for those of you that don't know, what is a Stronger Practice Hub? So Stronger Practice Hubs, there are 18 across the UK. We are one of two in the east of England, the other one being at Highfields Nursery in Ipswich. We've been a Stronger Practice Hub since July, and it's part of the £180 million COVID recovery for the early years sector. And our remit is basically to improve outcomes for all children in the early years. Next slide, please. There's lots of fully funded training, and that's basically the crux of the Stronger Practice Hub offer, is that it will always be, as tonight is, fully funded. This is just a crib sheet of the various different training that is available. I'm not going to go through it because we will email all the PowerPoints out to you. It's just so you can see kind of at a glance where you are in your career, what you're looking for, especially drawing your attention to the Senko. Obviously, lots of you here have obviously got an interest in speech and language today, so that's one you can do through various different providers. A really important part of our work is linking evidence and putting evidence-informed approaches into practice. So why we're doing what we're doing and the evidence behind it. There's the, the evidence store is online for everybody to access, but especially we have a focus linking all of the things we do online to the evidence and how we're improving outcomes for children. There are two programs that are linked to communication and language with a particular focus. The Early Years Professional Development Programme, which is EYPDP, fully funded. It has units on communication and language. And Talking Time, which is a programme that we will be recruiting for from January. Again, it's fully funded, and it's an intervention programme that supports staff to create a high-quality language learning environment in the classrooms. And the reason we chose Talking Time is that obviously in the sector there's a huge issue with staffing and release time, but the Talking Time people come to you, so they deliver the intervention with you and they train you in your settings. The really important one at the bottom is bespoke support. We can fund bespoke support for you in your settings, be that as a PBI, a childminder, or a maintained nursery. All you need to do is contact us through the QR codes or through our Facebook or emailing Damon on the reach out email address, and we can, if we can't do it, we can signpost you to somebody that can. So basically, this is a shameless plug for bespoke support to join our network. You probably are all on our network for the fact that you're here this evening, but telling us how we can support you. Do you want more of this? Do you want things with a particular focus? Because we are funded until November 24, and we want to be able to use the funding that we've got really successfully to have the biggest impact to improve outcomes for children. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jess. Okay, so without further ado, we will get going with speech and language red flags. First interesting thing to say is there is a movement away from the term red flags, actually. So I've put it because everybody knows what it is. just be careful when you're using that term. I think in future we're preferring things like indicators of, or traits of, or markers of. But, you know, this one was to kind of explain what the talk was about in a more catchy way. I'm going to launch straight in, really, so then we can get with the more general indicators of a speech and language delay. And then I'm going to go on to a few more specifics, things about fluency, so sort of stammering, things about neurodivergence as well. So if by 12 months a child in your setting isn't babbling with changes in tone, so that lovely da 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 that we used to that we like to see. If we're not using those early simple gestures like waving goodbye or shaking our heads, if we're not responding to name, and if we're not communicating in some way, if we need help with something, that can be pulling you to the item that they want, pointing, bringing you a picture, anything. But if they are sort of a passive passenger in life and not communicating their needs to you, that can be something to be looking out for. Okay, by 15 months, if we're not understanding or responding to really simple words like no and up, if we have no words at all, now, I'm sure you all know this, but they don't need to be the actual, accurate, proper word, as long as it is their word and it is consistent. That's what we're looking for. So if they're calling a dog a ruh, as in woof, that's fine. If they do it all the time and you know exactly what it means, that is a word. If they're not pointing to objects and pictures, you know, basic ones where you say, where's the shoe, where's the cup, things like that. And if we're not pointing to interesting things as if to go, look at this, this is super awesome, and I'd like you to share this moment with me, that can be a red flag also. 18 months, we're looking again at understanding those simple commands, really simple ones like don't touch. I would hope for around 20 single words ish. Again, I don't need lists. We don't want you to keep absolutely, you know, concrete records of it, but around about 20 words. If we're not responding with a word or a simple gesture to a simple question like what's that or where's your shoe, and if we can't point to 2 or 3 major body parts, that body parts is a really good one. So when I'm assessing language, if they are too little or too delayed to access any form of formal assessment, I do like to have a little look at body parts. It's a really, really good screen as to where we're going. By 24 months, so these little 2-year-olds, if we've got fewer than around 100 words and we're not joining things together, then I would start to be worried. Not imitating, so a lack of copying is something to be looking out for as well. And if we're not pretending, if that pretend play isn't on the horizon or isn't already there, that would be something that I would be concerned about too. By 30 months, if we've got fewer than around 300 words, if we're not using our verbs, if we haven't got any verbs coming out, and if we haven't got some adult grammar. Now, the grammar doesn't need to necessarily be correct, but the grammar does need to be coming out. We need to have some ings and some plurals coming out if possible. And then in that preschool kind of year, we're hoping that we get some questions. If we don't have questions by around 3 years, I would be concerned about that. I would want some sentences. And by 4 to 5, I would be wanting some simple stories. So them to be able to tell you a little bit about something that they've done in their day or something that somebody else did. Okay. So that's your kind of whistle stop. Now, I don't know about you guys, and I can't actually see you all, and you've probably mostly got your cameras off, but I feel like I'm seeing a lot more children with markers of autism, or ones where I sit there and go, I wonder. There seem to be very many more little people at the moment presenting with that. And so although I'm not in a position to diagnose, I just wanted to put a slide in because these are the things that you should be or could be looking out for. Now, this is by an American colleague, an American speech and language pathologist called Mrs. Speechy P. And I think if you have any interest whatsoever in autism, you should go and follow her on Instagram or Facebook. She is an absolute wealth. She does a massive autism handbook, one for parents and one for professionals, and it is an absolute wealth of knowledge. It's got an American slant, so perhaps not the how we access education and services in this country, but the rest is just absolutely glorious. So ASD can be a combination of characteristics. So you're looking at language differences, so delayed language, loss of words. So the regression, I think, is key. If you have a child where they've had some language or some skills and they regress, that to me is a massive trait that you could have some neurodivergence going on. If we're great at labeling, great at counting, great at the alphabet, but can't actually ask for what we want, that's a biggie as well. So eye contact could be fleeting, difficulty interacting with peers, much better with adults, plays alone, won't participate in conversations. We have a lot of repetitive actions, lining up toys, or crashing them over and over again. And then the sensory differences that you might see at lunchtime. So those selective eaters, they may sort of dislike having sort of their hair touched or being stroked at nap time or something. But it can be a combination of any or all of these. And I'm sure in the Q&A, I'm going to have some questions regarding what do you think this is? Could it be this or could it be that? And we get those a lot at the moment, particularly. And it's hard to know actually whether that is due to ASD or screen time or COVID. There's so many things that have all shifted all in one go in the early years that I think it's quite hard sometimes to know or to have a clear idea early on, for sure. Now, stammering or stuttering. This is one I get a lot of referrals for. We can expect a completely normal dysfluency. So lots and lots of children do go through some dysfluency or stammering when they're little. And actually what it is it's an incredibly sophisticated delaying tactic. Children have learned that we are busy people. And if we don't get our message across quickly or hold that adult's attention, they're going to be off. So what they do is they play for time while they find the word. If you think about it, children have got an awful lot to do when they're learning speech and language to get their message across. They've got to tell, their brain has got to tell their mouth which muscles to move to make the sounds. They're trying to struggle with emergent grammar. They haven't got a fully formed vocabulary system. They're coping usually in an environment with lots of background noise. It can be very hard to hold your thoughts together, and they can quite easily forget a word. So what they do instead is go, I want to go to the park. And that gives them time to access that final word park without mum, dad, caregiver, professional sort of going, yeah, all right, never mind, and going off to do the next thing, which we kind of all do. So when do you need to worry? When is it starting to look like a real stammer? Now, you will need to get a speech and language therapist to diagnose a true stammer. But what are your indicators that this is moving from the predictable childhood dysfluency into a true embedding stammer or stutter? Stammer and stutter can be used interchangeably. There's absolutely no difference in the two. So you'll see that I said that they would repeat phrases. So when we start to boil down to repeating whole words, like when are we playing? That's more concerning. When can we go? When can we go? When can we go? When do we go to the park? When we're repeating single sounds or syllables, so go away, or mummy. Also, if we have a sound in a word that is stretched out. Now, that is usually one of our hissy fricative sounds, like story or frog. But I had a very, very unusual case the other day of a child who was stammering on vowels. So she'd be going, stare, Allosaurus and dinosaur, which is incredibly unusual, but it can happen. Blocking is a huge indicator that you need to get a speech and language therapist really quite quickly. So when the mouth is ready to speak, but nothing comes out, so you might have mummy like that. If they stop speaking halfway through a sentence, that can be a sign, because children are very clever at knowing, hang on a minute, I'm going to stammer on that word. I need to find a good alternative word. And they will do that. It's called circumlocution, where they're talking around a word to try and avoid that word. When they look tense, or if an extra body movement, as soon as you can see some kind of tension or some kind of sort of foot stamping or hand tapping, any body involvement, that is another big cause for concern. So it can be quite hard to tell what is a natural pediatric developmental stammer and what is a true one. But they're your kind of guidelines. And if you're worried, you can always look at the BSA, I think it is the British BSS, the British Stammering Society as well. They're really, really good to go and have a look at. Okay, so I've looked at language, I've looked a bit at stammering, and I've looked a little bit at autism. There are other things where you might think, do you know what, this just isn't right. And these are the key ones that I think you need to be getting the GP, speech and language therapist, or the health visitor on board with if you notice. So excessive drooling. So this can be a sign of lots of things. So my daughter had it. She'd go through about 15, 20 bibs a day. And it was because her tonsils were so big at the back that she couldn't, there wasn't enough space in the back of her mouth to actually swallow all the saliva she was producing. So it would just come out again. But it could also be weak muscles, a kind of open mouth posture, which can then fall into some kind of speech issue. Ditto problems sucking and chewing and swallowing. So all of those muscles, and I alluded to this, I think, in my first webinar, if you were there. So we use the same muscles to suck and chew and swallow as we do to talk. So if you've got any problems with that, there could be some kind of issue with the musculature around the mouth. Again, if you have difficulty with control and coordination of lips, tongue and jaw. Now, you might notice that when a child is chewing at lunchtime, perhaps instead of sort of chewing up and down, they're kind of chewing quite sort of in an uncoordinated kind of way. And I think if you're noticing that, you're going to end up with probably some kind of ENT referral, but get to the GP. I've spoken about stuttering. And so you've got the main signs, but I think as well as that, whenever any embarrassment or frustration or difficulty with peers creeps in, that's what I didn't put on the other slide. So I talked more about the mechanical side of things, whereas actually it's when it starts to become embarrassing for the child. If you notice their confidence is dipping, if you're noticing that perhaps they're not engaging with their peers in the same way. Now, poor memory skills is another one. So if they're having difficulty compared with their peers, learning things like colours, numbers, shapes, or the alphabet, and that can be working memory, so sort of holding something in our brain while we're doing something else and then coming back to it. It could be a sign of some kind of auditory processing issue. So my daughter has ADHD and auditory processing disorder. And it was only when she was about 8 or 9 that we discovered that she thought the alphabet was W, X, Y, N, Z, because she'd heard the song and just thought the and was an N, and she thought N came as the penultimate letter of the alphabet. So it's all those little clues that you can start looking at when they're sort of learning their early phonics and their early alphabets. Is there anything going on there? Other things to notice. Are they responding normally, or are they not responding when they're spoken to? So it could be an issue such as a deafness or a hearing loss or glue ear or processing. Could be some kind of trait of autism, but it's that, are they responding normally in the setting? Has it always been that way? Has it changed recently? Have a little think. a sudden loss of speech and language skills, a loss of any ability at any age, must be addressed immediately by the GP. So whether they're walking and that suddenly becomes uncoordinated, if they're talking and that suddenly becomes uncoordinated, you must raise concerns immediately. If they're not speaking clearly or well by age 3, I would want to be understanding about sort of 75% of what they're saying by age 3. Okay, you should be able to kind of get what they're saying by then. Okay. How do we broach concerns with parents? This can be tricky. This can be really tricky. Can often be the hardest bit. I tend to broach concerns by asking a question first, because then you are opening up a dialogue rather than slamming your opinion straight down on the table. I think if you open it up as a conversation, it feels much more like a shared thing, and it doesn't feel like you're putting parents on the spot. Be reassuring, help is out there, and some kind of speech and language delay potentially, it's not necessarily, it's not the end of the world. We can help. I think ask another team member to help you have the conversation. So, if your setting has a Senko or a lead SEN person, or even just a more experienced colleague, maybe there's a team member who knows that child better than you. Maybe they've moved up a room and they're new to you in your room, but maybe you can get their old key worker from that room to help. Have some information and handouts ready. I tend to find if you've got something to give them to go away and read, that can really help as well. I've got a couple of slides here that I just found and I just thought were quite interesting to finish with. So again, this is from Mrs. Speechy P. So why you shouldn't tell a parent, don't worry about delayed development. We've got all of the lovely, helpful people who say, my son didn't talk to who was 3 and now he's an engineer. Don't worry about it. I think a lot of people, particularly grandparents, and I expect if you had your cameras on, I'd see everybody nodding, just say, oh, don't worry, they'll get there in their own time. We know that early intervention in speech and language is an absolute essential if you can. So I think just saying a sort of blanket, don't worry, it invalidates the feelings of the parents. So if they're asking about delayed development, they're worried. Okay. If they're at the point where they're thinking, I'm going to be brave enough to bring this up, because as a parent, it's really hard. It's really hard to say, I think there's a problem. And so I think it can take a lot of courage for them to do that. And so we need to honour that. It also delays interventions. If you say, don't worry, give it 6 months, then, it's okay for a professional to say that. It's okay for us to say, yeah, we can watch and wait. But I think it has to be done by the person who is sort of assessing them. By all means, share success stories, but remember that for every child that just made it, there's another few that made it because they went to therapy or, who wished they'd started it earlier. Okay. And this, I think, is a really handy one to give those parents when you, if you talk to them about something. So as well as all the websites that we'll talk about and all of the resources that we'll talk about probably in the Q&A, teaching parents how to model language is crucial, and teaching them the +1 rule is crucial. So if your child gives you 1 word, you give them 2. If they give you 2, you give them 3. Show them how to bolt language on. Please get your parents just to wait, because the amount of therapy sessions where I've been maybe playing with the bubbles and I've gone, what do you want? And the parent's gone, say bubbles, say bubbles, say bubbles. And actually, when we just get the parent just to sit back and give the child a bit of time, they often do it themselves. Get them to repeat and respond. You cannot stress how much we need to stop parents who have the best hearts saying, what's this? What's this? What's this? What's this? Can you say this? Say cat. Cat. What's that? It's a cat. Cat. Say cat. You can say cat. I know you can say cat. Because actually these poor children are just going, oh my goodness. So, we really need to pull them away from that. Too many questions makes it all so stressful for little people. We need to be putting the language in, not pressuring them to pull it out, and try not to get frustrated. And it can be very hard as a professional and as a parent not to just go, oh, I just wish I could say it. But I think we have to try and really remember that as well. So I think, yeah, kind of just about time. That is the main whistle stop for things you need to be looking out for. So what normally happens at this point is that we throw the floor open to questions, and it's the point where people go, I've got a little one in my setting where ... and we can have a useful conversation about whether you need to be concerned, the access you can help, who you can find, and what you should be doing. So, and I may have missed stuff. There are so many facets to speech and language development, as you know, that it's very easy to perhaps have missed something. But I'm just trying to give you your sort of umbrella red flags. So I'd be delighted to hear any questions if anybody's got anything.